Hello and welcome another day with astrology. And he's a very special guy. I'm super excited to present him to you because he's a shamanic astrologer. He's a musician, he's a magician, he's everything but the great. He has the honor of he has so many great contributions to astrology. And I'm so grateful that you're here, Brett Joseph, aka Gemini Brett.
It is my pleasure. Thank you so much for the invite. We've been planning on doing something in person since I was able to have the wonderful fortune of meeting you in Istanbul. And as things are in the world right now, it's going to be a bit. So I'm very happy to connect in this way online and to see your shining light at this wonderful time where we go into the darkness for the sun to be reborn. And I'm very excited to share some of the sacred astronomy mysteries of the New Year's tree and some of the other holiday traditions that are practiced around the world at this time. Is there anything you want to say, Gencher, or should I just dive in?
You can dive in, and I just can say that I'm still hoping to have you in Turkey in our sacred areas, and it's all yours. Thank you.
Yeah, it will happen one of these days. I guess up front, I should say I'm planning for an hour, but I'm also going to try to speak slowly because I understand some live translation is happening. And speaking slowly is not my forte. I want to start with something beautiful that addresses this wonderful question of why 12? Why 12 months or 12 signs or 12 apostles or tribes? I mean, we hear this 12ness. Why 12 days of Christmas is some practice at these days, although it tends to now be before the holiday and commercial Christmas in modern times instead of leading from that celebration to Epiphany as it was once celebrated. And we find some beautiful answers to this question of why 12 from astrology's sister science of sacred geometry. So let me show this to you and I'll speak about it a bit before we go climb the New Year's tree. This is the 12-spoked wheel of order, born through the seed of life. 7, which is born by 3, and 3 by 1, 7 births, 12. And 24, and these mysteries of number magic. You know, in the day, we would never study astrology without first studying the components, the sacred sciences of number, which are number itself. In the quadrivium tradition, they called this arithmetic, but it's very different than adding and subtracting. So numerology might be something that's a little bit more familiar, I guess, in modern times, to the idea that number is not only quantity, but quality as well. And that's true in the geometry, which is called number in space. So I learned geometry in high school and it was these mathematical proofs in this, but it wasn't sweeping the compass and studying creation through the act of creating. So what was once called geometry, we do have quantity measurable, but also quality correspondences. And today that probably lands better in the modern consciousness as the expression, sacred astronomy. Sacred as harmony, music, musical harmony, frequency, number in time is another side of this diamond that points to number in time and space. So number itself, number in space, geometry, number in time, harmony, number in time and space, astronomy, astronomy, the measurable heavenly happenings. And astrology is a rainbow bridge that allows us in this experience of understanding of intimate embodiment of the measurable heavenly happenings, the astronomy, then we can speak of its qualities, the immeasurable, the correspondences, which folks tend to call astrology today, but really astrology is the bridge between the measurable and the immeasurable. And for me, it's very important to teach in the geometry, in the harmony, especially in the astronomy, for us to connect to these mysteries of heaven and earth. And that's why I call my school Earth Astrology. You know, so much about this time, let me put this slide away for a bit, is about, of course, the birthing of the light. Now, we live on a world that is in many ways a tale of two hemispheres, and I'll speak about that some today because I want to address the sacred astronomy of the world tree. And of course, this December solstice, winter solstice for us in the Northern Hemisphere, is summer solstice for those who live, as we say, down below, right, in the Southern Hemisphere. And things are different in the tropics than they are in these temperate zones where you and I live, well, depending on where you're listening from. I'm in the Bay Area of Northern California near San Francisco. I'm 38 degrees north of Earth's equator, same as Athens and Izmir in Turkey. So I have the same sky as you, just 11 hours later as the Earth spins, right? So I should be asking you about the future since you're living it from where I am on Earth. Where I am on Earth, things look like, this right now. This is the current image down the street of maple tree. Oh, the sacred oak here in California. We have many what we call live oaks, and they're now turning brown and curling. And the holly and the ivy and the berries are everywhere, right? So we see this on the Christmas or New Year's trees at this time of year. This is an interesting one from a pistache tree. These trees, which only months ago were so beautiful, radiant, flaming colors, and now no leaves at all, and just these seeds for the trees that will once be. You know, and some of these fruits even work in the winter time. So it's interesting to see, like this is the rosemary, that some plants flower now. But for the most part, we know, as it is for us, that this is a time for deep rest. So it's strange where I live, you know, this time of the year has been very commercialized. And it's all about gifts, which is wonderful. On one level, this reaches way back into the tradition, right? I mean, because at this time of the darkest night, we are called to celebrate life should we not have it tomorrow. And it is a time, of course, when many of the ancient tribes would find their final rest. And when many would be seated. The old traditions of feasting and leaving food for the spirits, not cleaning the table until the morning, because we know the spirits might come and eat at night. Traditions of screaming away the spirits you don't want in your home, yeah, or screaming away the year behind as we look forward to, right, the new year ahead. So January in this calendar that so many use today, named for the god Janus, the two-headed one, with the old head and the sickle and the beard, looking back to the year that was, and the baby face, looking forward to the year to come, and daring to whisper the word hope. So these traditions like of the sun born at solstice time, which many celebrate, they predate any figure called Jesus Christ. It really is about the rebirth of the light from the darkness, from the longest night. And then the sun will circumambulate or walk around the temple, spending its time each month with a different astrological sign. So these show up in the myths around the world as one of many 12s. And so this one now, as we move in the tropical zodiac from Sagittarius to Capricorn, where I live, it looks like this. And so getting outside, putting our feet on the ground, opening our ears and our eyes and our nose, to receive the heavenly teachings through the most important planet of them all. Is that Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, maybe goddess of love? No, of course, I'm talking about Earth, the planet you chose, or perhaps she chose you. I don't really know how all of that works, but these are the questions I ask as I explore the heavenly harmonies and do what I can to be a terrestrial narrator for the celestial conversation, for the celestial symphony. So Earth astrology starts here, and I'm convinced that the mysteries of the zodiac are of Earth, and that really it is about the New Year's tree, or the world tree. So these days, midnight on January 1st will be the time when folks scream, forgetting that they're meant to be screaming the year behind away and screaming in excitement for the year to come, perhaps. Forgetting these traditions of spirits, forgetting why the feast, because with our modern conveniences, many of us will not feel the pain of the cold, which could take life. And of course, and let's open our heart to those for whom that is not true, those whom do not have a home, do not have a safe place, do not have a tribe. And at this time, when there's so much division in families, in groups and circles, let's also light a candle and put on our wish list this year a hope for togetherness, for love, for the open heart. And I know I was invited to speak here by one whose heart is much bigger than the room in which I sit. And I imagine that is also true of you. It's up to the heart and the loving heart to see us through these times of potential division. My first prayer anytime I sit with somebody in honor to engage with their birth chart as an astrological counselor, or anytime I have the opportunity to share what I hear in the heavens, like today, my first prayer is heart before chart. Because I can get into this and talk about the Venus retrograde conjoined Pluto and the Saturn Uranus square perfecting once again, and we could go on and on and on. But today, instead of all of that, I want to speak about Earth, and I want to speak about this tree. Oh wait, what happened there? Well, the tree should point north. This is an image of the tree in my house, a lot of planets hanging from its boughs. And we found this star that has 4 and 8 and 12, kind of, but more the 4, really speaking of the stations of the year, the solstices like this, the equinoxes when night and light are equal, the cross quarter times in between. I want to start by talking about this fella, this North Pole elf. And it said that the living Saint Nicholas is from Turkey, from Padara. many mysteries about that one. And truly, these traditions reach so much further back than the knowledge which is currently sourced. You know, many kids where I live, this is what they know about this time of the year, that it's Santa who brings toys on this sleigh pulled by flying reindeer, who lives at the North Pole with a workshop of elves creating toys for all the world's girls and boys. You know, these are the myths that we hear, and it reaches back into deeper traditions, especially northern traditions of the winter king, of Father Time, or Grandfather Frost. So there's some interesting questions here. Why is Santa in a sleigh? Reindeer, of course, an image of the winter time. Why does Santa live at the North Pole of Earth? I guess because that's the place where it is most winter. But what I want to show you is that this being resides in the sky. Are you familiar with your stars? We're looking at many here which are never seen in the southern hemisphere sky, but can be seen in Turkey every night. And where I live, also the same. My night just starts about 11 hours after yours. What do you see? Do you know any of these constellations? Do you see a dragon? Do you see two bears? And the one that herds them? An image of how these constellations are typically drawn in the Western tradition today. Back before then, in a tradition from Babylonia that would later really find its way to Persia, right? So many different transmissions of the heaven mysteries and multicultural contributions and sharing. This is an image of a constellation that in some languages today is still called the wain, the wagon, here in the middle of your screen. I'll circle it for effect, okay? And the one, the agriculture, the one who tends the land, who pushes that wagon, right? So these constellations, we often know this today, which was once called, and still some places still, the seven rishis, the seven sages, as the Big Dipper, right? An asterism. And weirdly, of the Big Bear, this constellation, that somehow, though bears on Earth have tiny tails, those in the heavens have very long tails. This is the Big Bear's tail and the Little Bear's tail here, in a very important star, which we will return to in a bit. But we can follow the arc of the Big Dipper, as it's called, or the wain, the wagon, or dare I say sleigh. To follow the arc, we say, to Arcturus, this bright, beautiful orange, or maybe we could even say red star in the heavens, a super giant, massive red star, as the astronomers call it. And that is this bright northern star of the herdsman who either tends to that wagon or the one who follows the bear around the heavens. That wagon, that wain, that sleigh. And you can see the handle of the Big Dipper, or the arms of the plow, extending through the stars of the herdsman as the train of these reindeer who pulls Santa's sleigh through the sky. We need one more, the one with the red nose, Rudolph, whose nose I'm sure is Arcturus. So why would this fellow live at the North Pole? And this will bring us back into deeper traditions, traditions of the tree. In one direction, we can follow the wain, the wagon arc to Arcturus, but in the other, we can follow the pointer stars, follow the stars to this one, that as the sky spins, doesn't move. Every day, Santa's sleigh is pulled around the world by the reindeer. These, I feel, are images of wreaths of light. These different parallels, or they are called. These are slides that are not meant to be here, but this one is. Okay. This is a time lapse I took in Sedona, Arizona. Actually, when I was hanging out with Maurice Fernandez, who I understood spoke with you very recently. So as the wheel of the sky keeps spinning, there is a point in the middle of that heavenly wheel that doesn't really move at all. It's called the celestial pole. And in our day and age, it hosts a star we call North Star or Polaris. Now, it's a long conversation for another time, but due to a beautiful astronomical cycle, the Great Year, which is about 26,000 years long, due to an effect called axial precession, Polaris will not be pole star or North Star for long. Hasn't been our North Star for too long. This changes over the eons. 5,000 years ago, our North Star was Thuban, the heart of Draco, the dragon. In another 10,000 years, it will once again be Vega. Some say that is a symbol of the golden age, and that we currently reside on the other side of this great cycle. In a sense, we could say that we are living for centuries, even millennia, at the winter solstice of the great year, the precessional year, the 26,000 year great year. But in our day and age, and for your entire lives, we are blessed to have a star that marks north. And so we can go outside and find at the same altitude above the ground, due north, the same altitude above the ground, equal to the latitude on Earth in which we live. Okay, I'm 38 north, like Izmir, Istanbul, a little north of there, right? But I'm at 38 north, so I can go outside at night and I can face north and look 38 degrees up, and there is Polaris, there is North Star. And if I give my heart to this shining star, I am now aligned to Gaia's spine, as I like to call the cardinal directions, to the cusps of the global signs. I can reach my arms to my sides. And when I do, I'll have the east on my right if I'm facing north, the west on my left. So my east hand will be up for the rising sky, and my left hand will be down for the side that rests. This star at the center of the spinning sky, why does the sky spin? This is why the earth spins. Not to scale, okay? Half of earth is always in light, and half of earth is always in earth's shadow, day and night. And this is called the primary motion, Earth's daily rotation. This axis of rotation defines the cardinal directions. And I like to call that rotational axis the spine of Gaia, the spine of our Mother Earth, or the sword of our stone, or another term that we'll find our way to in a bit. The plane of our planet's rotation is the equator. And we project that into our heavens and call it the celestial equator. I like to call it the circle of matter. Because though this rotational motion brings us such hits as sunrise and sunset, it really is all about the Earth. Here, I'm looking at Earth from above the North Pole there. So I guess this Santa fellow has like a water home. If I had a massively powerful telescope living at North Star, at Polaris, this would be my view of Earth, down onto Earth's North Pole. And this circumference would be that celestial equator, Earth's equator, the circle of matter, as I'm fond of calling it. If you know this symbol, you'll know it's the one that we today use to depict sun, not Earth. And that Earth's glyph looks like this, which we call the cross of matter inside the circle of spirit. This is one of the many reasons why my students begin with a compass in their hand in this square and draw these shapes and draw the glyphs. Why do we say the circle is spirit? What is that? Why do we say the crescent is soul? What is that? Why do we say the cross is matter? But maybe I should stick with the astronomy for now, where the answers are a little more simple. And I'm going to start that spinning over so we have enough time to talk about these 4 significant places in any moment's time. At the bottom of the cross, we will find sunrise, where locations on Earth are spinning out of Earth's shadow and into the light. On the right, facing the sun, is sunreach, the midday sun from the rise to the reach, the height of the light, and then to the rest in the west. So locations at the top of the screen, I guess currently it's North America, spinning out of the light and into the shadow, spinning out of the day and into the night. And in the middle of the night, halfway between sunrest in the west and sunrise in the east, we have sun roots. In the northern hemisphere where I live, that rooting sun in the middle of the night is always due north and below the ground. Rise in the east, reach in the south, rest in the west, north. Roots. If you study astrology, you'll know these initials we use for the ascendant and the midheaven and the descendant and the IC, or the Imum Celi, the bottom of the heavens. But I said I'd stick with the astronomy. There's very importantly 4 quadrants of this happening. We have from sunrise to sunreach at midday, from sunreach falling to set, from setting to the roots underground, the middle of the night. And we can equate these 4 also to these principal stations of the year. Sunrise is like spring, and midday like summer solstice, and sunset like autumn, fall, and midnight like this time of the year, the darkness, the cold, the winter, from which the light is reborn. I had a dream the other night about this device, the dreidel. Perhaps you are familiar with it. It comes out around the Festival of Lights, the Hanukkah time in that tradition. It has 4 sides, each with a letter. And it's used to play a game. Kids spin this top. And it's interestingly a gambling game, but usually played not with money, but rather, like golden coins of chocolate, which I will suggest represents the sun. The dreidel, as it's called, reaches back, it is said, into traditions from Rome and perhaps Greece before that. And it's an ancient gambling game. So if it lands on one side, it says you have to give money into the pot from which we are trying to win. On another side, you get to take some money. On another side, some say you do nothing, or some say you have to put all of your money into the pot. You lose everything you've got. And the fourth side is you take it all. You take all the money, right? You want that one, of course. Now, I will suggest that this four-sided thing, it is these four quadrants, as we call them, by the daily motion from the rise to the reach, the rest to the roots, or on the yearly energy, these seasonal stations of spring and summer and fall and winter. Because sunrise is we are putting some light in. Do you see? Sun reach, it's like all of the light, all of the gold, all of the sun, like summer solstice, if we're speaking yearly, right? Sunset or autumnal equinox going into the fall, into the autumn, it's like put some of the light away. And then of course, this time of year or the middle of the night, either do nothing at all, right? Or you've got to put all the light back in, right? You have no light left because it's the middle of the night. It's the beginning of the winter. It's the longest night. It's coming into the coldest time. Yeah, winter solstice, which in so many traditions was the beginning of the year, in a time when we celebrate the ancestors and the dead, and we celebrate life and we pray to make it through the cold time, to be that light reborn, in a time for deep rest. So when I move out and about and I hear all these happy songs and these twinkling lights, that's rooted in a tradition where we sing in praise of joy and life and give gratitude simply to be alive, even when times are hard and cold and dark. But also I feel so often in the kind of consumerism, at least in the realms where I was born and live, there's this attempt to take us away from that time when we are meant to put all of the energy back in, to go into our darkness, to go into our stillness. It is in the darkest hour when the small light of the candle will be seen as the greatest gift of life. It is at this time when the sun has reached its southernmost expression and now will stop, which is what solstice means. The sun stops, and a few days later be reborn as it moves north for 6 months. It is at this time where we celebrate life, not by running away in fear of death. Look at what the global fear of death has led to at this time. No life. No, by staring into the missing eyes of the skeleton and contemplating death and preparing to die in a good way, and honoring that beautiful truth that death is a most essential part of life. Perhaps life is a most essential part of death. Who am I to say that if we have the willingness to look into the tomb, we will be repurposed in the way we choose to walk, to breathe, to live, to love. Those who fear death and teach you to fear death would ask you to separate yourselves from love. Those who are unafraid to look into the darkness will always find light shining on them and through them. So the spine of Gaia, Earth's rotational axis, is tilted in respect to her orbital plane. And this, my friends, is the reason for the seasons. Another one not drawn to scale, okay? This is a very important time of the year shown. Do you know what time that is? This tilt angle, as it's called, is in our day and age about 23.5 degrees. You know, the golden number can be transmitted through the Fibonacci sequence: 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, etc. Do you know there's 235 lunations, by which I mean new moon to new moon, a synodic month in 19 years, the time to synchronize the years of gold and silver? Well, 23.4 is actually a more accurate number, but if you speak that, then you have to know from the horizontal, it's 66.6, and people tend to be afraid of that number, which in the old number magic traditions is actually a number of the light, a number of the sun. And I guess I'm speaking a little too poetically and definitely too mysteriously here, so I guess let's just keep our feet on the ground and speak astronomy. This is the time where once a year, because Earth's rotational axis defines the directions, right? So Gaia's spine will point in every moment forever from the center of Earth through the terrestrial poles, like Santa's home, to North Star. In our day and age, Polaris, okay? And I'm not talking about magnetic north. Those magnetic poles migrate. I'm talking about the rotational pole of Earth literally defines the cardinal directions. I'll be saying that a few times throughout this show. Now, the star is very far away, so I'm going to send it over there, okay? But just know that Earth's northern axis literally defines north. It's always north, and in our day and age, it will always point to Polaris, which where I sit, you can see I keep pointing over here because that's where Polaris is. That's north where I sit, northeast and east. And do you know the directions where you live? Do you connect into the directions? Do you study astrology? Well, I want to show you that the tropical zodiac is a directional thing. So Earth has north and Earth has south. It's a little bit more troubling to say that Earth has east. Why do I say that? Well, where you live, it's night, and where I live right now, it's day. Okay, I mean, you have something very different in the heavens rising in the east for you right now than I do. Okay, like when the sun rises for you, I am sleeping and dreaming, or I should be, but I'm insane. And we could go on and on like that, right? So east from Turkey and east from California are very different stories. However, because there is a global north, there is also a global east. It's just perpendicular to that north place. At least we can say that there is a global east that resides on this orbital plane. And it is at this time when many celebrate Easter. No coincidence there, by the way. When the sun is due east of Earth center, this crystal core beneath our feet where we are all connected, where we are all one. And interestingly, it is that Earth center, not the surface where we live, breathe, and witness these heavenly happenings. It is Earth's center where we actually measure astrology. I mean, the placement of the planets in the zodiac from. So this is a time that we call March equinox. I mean, most will call it spring equinox, but I like to act locally, but think globally. And for the Southern Hemisphere, of course, Northern Hemisphere spring equinox is Southern Hemisphere autumnal equinox, right? So I'll call this March equinox, or I could call it East equinox. Or if I utilize the tropical zodiac, I can call this Aries equinox. This is the time every year when the sun is due east of Earth's center, and we experience the sunlight moving from the tropical sign of Pisces to Aries. And from there, right, the Earth keeps orbiting and spinning. The spin is the day, the orbit is the year. And during this yearly motion or secondary motion, we on Earth experience the sun moving through the sign of Aries and into the sign of Taurus. Now I'll stop here just to celebrate the 8ness of the year, a time here where many will celebrate Beltane and the May Day, dancing around the maypole. Have you seen that tradition? Right? You know, and traditionally it's like little girls and boys, and you have them alternating and they're weaving ribbons, right? Like this, braiding ribbons as they dance about the maypole. Now it's a fertility festival because it's the blooming of the rose and the return of the spring in the Northern Hemisphere anyway, from which that tradition hails. And so many see this maypole as a phallus, but I will suggest it is Earth's rotational axis, friends. And that the weaving, especially when we switch kind of in symbolically the yin and the yang energies, we see that in so many of the sacred systems like astrology, where a diurnal or yang sign like Aries is followed by a nocturnal or yin sign like Taurus. Now I'll circle the shadow here. A very important truth of the seasons is there is only one day each year where that proportion of light and shadow would be experienced of the earth, right? This tilt is the reason for the seasons. But what I want to show you very importantly is that this zodiac, this tropical zodiac that many of us use, especially in the West, as we call it, is a directional device. Like so many ancient shamanic wisdom traditions, the tropical zodiac itself is aligned to the energies of the cardinal directions. It's only at this time when Earth experiences sun in the very middle of tropical Taurus, which means the middle of Northern Hemisphere spring as we do this today, the very middle of that time between Aries equinox or east equinox, or I'll speak Northern Hemisphere, spring equinox and summer solstice, right in between this cross-quarter time. The sun is exactly northeast of the center of Earth. Those directions themselves defined by Gaia's spine, by Earth's rotational axis. Let's move on from here through Taurus, through all of Gemini, and we get to the height of the light in this Northern Hemisphere experience. Why? Because it's the only day each year when Earth's North Pole is leaning towards the sun. So we get much more light on the Northern Hemisphere side and much more darkness on the Southern Hemisphere side. In fact, south of the Antarctic Circle at this time, the sun never rises, and north of the Arctic Circle, it never sets. Summer solstice, the height of the light, equivalent to that midday experience, right? And this is the cusp of tropical Gemini and Cancer. Cancer, which like Gemini is a northern sign, but while Gemini takes us further north, Cancer brings us less north, back towards equinox and equal light and night. It is only at the time of equinox, shown in the upper left and the lower right here, where the terminator, as it's called, the shadow of Earth, is aligned to Gaia's spine, is aligned to the New Year's tree. Oh, well, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Right, is aligned to the rotational axis. At the solstice extreme, shown in the upper right and the lower left, right, we have that terminator leaning 23.5 degrees from due north and due south, as defined by Gaia's spine. So now we move into the southern signs. We see the sun pass through Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius. December solstice this time. And this, of course, is why we are experiencing less light in the Northern Hemisphere now, because Earth's north axis is leaning away from the sun. You see that you are the sun in the example of my camera, right? So less light in the Northern Hemisphere, less light in Turkey, more shadow, right? The Southern Hemisphere experiences summer solstice and we experience winter solstice, the longest night, the rebirth of the light, the candle in the darkness, the sun reborn. Finally, to round out the year, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. And we begin again. I mean, many do begin at this time each year. Some say this is the beginning of the astrological year. It's long been used, actually, the chart of that moment in time, right? Which is a moment in time. This is an important thing. When I say midnight on January 1st, you should scream at something. That's a different time for you than it is for me. There is only one time each year when the sun is due east of the center of Earth, where we are all connected. And you can see why many would choose to begin the year at that time. It was once done. Think about it. Even in our current calendar, if March was the first month of the year, then October would be the 8th, like octagon, 8, and Sep 9, and Nov, Sep, 9. Anyway, Dec is 10. There's something wrong going on here. Sorry, no, Dec should be 10, right? I've talked myself into a strange circle. So let me just get back to this one because I don't think I'm going to make it out of there alive. But I imagine there's some laughs happening in the comments and people who are speaking the truth. There we go. September happens before October, right? So Sep, like a septagram, is 7, and then Oc 8, Nov 9, and Dec 10, right? So, I mean, it's weird that we call December the 12th month of the year. This might have to do with Julius, July, and Augustus, August, being put where they were in the older calendar to move from 10 to 12. But if we begin our year at East time, and I mean that quite literally, east, the sun east of Earth's center, then Sep is 7 and Oc is 8, like that, right? If we want to feel into why should we begin a year when the sun is east of Earth, just go outside before the sunrise and watch that ball of light come and greet you and bring us from night to day. Clearly, the eastern sky is the place of new beginnings. And by the way, if you watch the eastern sky at night, you'll see that it takes the shape of the ram's horns and the Aries glyph. This is a very important part of my Earthstrology school. We tune into the mysteries that are shown in these glyphs. I'll reveal a couple to you. But in many older traditions, no, the day begins at sunset, which seems like an odd thing to do. Not if you celebrate and align your months with the moon. We today oddly begin our days in the middle of the night. Doesn't that seem weird? But it is at that time when the sun begins its daily climb from the roots down below. We have evidence of this rising, of course, when the sun comes and greets us in the east. And in our calendar, at least in the Northern Hemisphere experience, though no longer aligned to the solstice as it should be, for that is a global moment in time, whereas midnight on January 1st certainly is not. But there are many traditions reaching way back where, yes, this December solstice, this winter solstice, more importantly said, is the beginning of year, because it is the light reborn from the longest night. Now, you might have been looking at this static image, and if you studied astrology, and it's like, wait a second, what? Why would you have Gemini and Cancer at December solstice? That's backwards. But no, look at the arrow. Okay, so when it's March equinox or spring equinox for the northern hemisphere, it's the sun that is seen from Earth moving from Pisces to Aries. At December solstice, it's the Earth which is arranged south of, or sorry, north of the sun. So the sun is at Earth's southern pole, right? And the Earth sees the sun at the Sagittarius Capricorn cusp. So there's this old cosmology, and it's what most astrologers feel to be true, which is the zodiac is way out there. And if you join my school, I will quickly prove to you that that is quite false, that the zodiac, the tropical zodiac, is of the Earth. And so as I land that zodiac here, around the cross of matter inside the circle of spirit, that cross of matter you can clearly see is Earth's rotational axis. Yeah, spine of Gaia, the sword of our stone, the world tree, and the celestial equator, the circle of matter. And now as I bring the ecliptic here, in the zodiac form centered around the Earth, Earth's zodiac, Earth astrology, we will find that at this September equinox time shown at the bottom of the screen, that indeed the sun is aligned to the cusp of Libra, you see? And we'll move that zodiac with the Earth. And at each of these 4 stations shown, we will find now the kind of proper expected alignment, that Earth sees the sun at the Capricorn cusp at December solstice, at the Aries cusp at March equinox, at the Cancer cusp at June solstice, right? The tropical zodiac is a directional device, and it is Earth's zodiac. So this is the rotational situation, the diurnal motion, the daily motion, the primary motion. And the tropical zodiac, the astronomy of the tropical zodiac, the very real astronomy of the tropical zodiac, this is something I preach loudly, okay? Because in our day and age, the astronomers will tell you that because the tropical signs, like these ones, Aries, or as the sun moves throughout the year, this one, Cancer, or this one, Libra, or this one, Capricorn. Astronomers of our day and age ridicule tropical astrology, saying that the signs do not align to the constellations anymore. And you know what? They're right. But what they are wrong about, and many, many tropical astrologers are wrong about, is the idea that the tropical signs are out there. The tropical zodiac has nothing to do with any star other than our own. And I'm not in any way suggesting that the stars there, the constellational shapes, which by the way are only seen that way from Earth, or at least from our solar system. I'm not saying that the stars in these constellations do not participate with our energetic experience on Earth. I'm a storyteller. I live and tell their tales. I'm just saying that the tropical zodiac is not about the stars out there. There's a zodiac for that. It's called sidereal, of the stars. The tropical zodiac is the zodiac of Earth. It is Earth astronomy. It is Earth astrology. And it is simply about the interface, which we can clearly see here in this geocentric or Earth-centered view. The tropical zodiac is simply about the interface between the plane of the day, the circle of matter or the equator, and the plane of the year, the Earth's orbital plane, which from Earth we see is the plane that the sun takes as it crosses through these stations of the year and dances with the 12 constellations, signs, which are different thing, tribes, apostles, whatever it may be. on this ecliptic plane, as we call it, the plane of the Earth-Sun relationship. And so I call it the circle of spirit, because that's where the sun lives. And these two planes cross at the equinox points and most diverge at the solstice points. These are 4 very real astronomical points. How we get from those 4 to the 12, it's a little bit more difficult to say. Astronomically, we can speak to the number of new moons in a year, but sometimes there's 13. In the musical harmony tradition, we can look to the 12 tones in an octave, but that's just one way to divide that amount of sound space. The geometry tradition has a very clear expression of how 12 is born through 7. I showed a little bit of that at the very beginning here. And that's where my students begin. First with the source, and then the circle, and then the 6 around 1, and I digress. Anyway, let me show you how true it is when I say that this tropical zodiac is a directional mechanism. We're gonna dance with the solar serpent. So you see at the bottom of the screen, that snake, that sine wave, right? Which is a graph of the sun's annual declination, right? So maybe you didn't know you were coming to a science class. If not, surprise. All right, declination is an angular measurement north or south of Earth's equator. At the time of east equinox, to which east is aligned, also Passover, the time of the year when the sun is passing over the celestial equator in the east, it has a declination of 0 because it's on the equator. But from there, the sun will move north of Earth's equator, and moving through the tropical signs of Aries and Taurus and Gemini, the sun finds its way to its most northern extreme. And that's why the June solstice, the Cancer solstice, when the sun ingresses Cancer, it is the longest day in the northern hemisphere. This is the beautiful directional truth of the zodiac. Earth's North Pole is leaning towards that degree of the tropical zodiac, or that place of the orbital plane, in every moment forever. Not to the same star that changes over time, not to the same constellation, but always the North Pole leans towards this place, which is furthest north from the equator. And you know what, let me tilt this, because this is how we're used to seeing this scene, right? Usually the globes in our classrooms have that tilt. So they'll show us the rotational axis, the world tree, but they're tilted to show that seasonal reason, right, of Earth's tilt in regards to the sun as it orbits in its revolution every year, right? And so maybe it's a little more familiar to see this image like this, with that northern axis tilted or leaning towards 0 Cancer, in this moment called June solstice or Cancer solstice or North solstice, towards the sun only in that moment. So we looked at this from a heliocentric or sun-centered point of view. Here it is from the Earth-centered point of view. Now, this is a very important truth. In our day and age, 0 Cancer is not aligned to the constellation that I call Crab, because I prefer to differentiate constellations from signs in this way. They are very different things. So for me, the Twins is a constellation, but Gemini is a sign. In our day and age, actually 0 Cancer is more aligned to the foot of the Twins. It's not aligned to the Crab at all. And this is the reason why astronomers, sidereal astrologers often attack the tropical zodiac, because they've forgotten Earth astronomy. They've forgotten the reason for the seasons. And so I've had many astronomers, like, and I mean, when I say that, like modern rationalist science lab coat astronomers, like ridicule me for choosing to study astrology and choosing this zodiac that they suggest is no longer aligned as it was 2000 years ago and therefore wrong. And they'll tell me, for example, that this time of year when the sun is in 0 Cancer, it should be called Gemini because it's there in the sky. It's aligned to that constellation way out there. And I say, well, why don't you call Earth's tropic, northern tropic, the Tropic of Gemini then? And they look at me typically with a confused stare of like, how is that even in any way related to what I'm arguing with you? It has everything to do with the tropical zodiac, which is named, by the way, for the Greek word tropikos, which means turn around. Now, when the sun ingresses tropical Cancer, it is shining directly above Earth's Tropic of Cancer. Not the Tropic of Gemini, the Tropic of Cancer. And so then if these astronomers have an open enough mind to have a conversation, I will show them the truth, the astronomical truth of the tropical zodiac. And anyone who's been willing to listen at the end of my spiel, which takes a bit, as you can see, will say, huh, oh, that's a real thing. And maybe even let me look at their chart. Capricorn is the northern sign. Now remember, the directions themselves are defined by Gaia's spine, the sword of our stone, or as it's been called throughout time, the world tree, like Yggdrasil. There are many names throughout cultures, time on earth. This, my friends, is the Christmas tree or the New Year's tree. And it has a star on top called Polaris, called the North Star. That changes, but in our day and age, until your grandchildren's grandchildren move along, they will have Polaris as North Star. Your grandparents did too, but it's more aligned now than it was then. And it will be more aligned in about 70 years from now than it is today. So we have a New Year's tree with a star on top, and the tree is called Earth's rotational axis. And there's a reason why I show the top north. Now, if you've ever laid beneath a very full evergreen tree, like a fir or pine, cedar, whatever it may be, especially in the summertime, right? When it's super full and you just by day have a little sunlight shining through, you'll see inside the tree that it looks like it's wearing stars, right? So this is the world tree with the many stars on it, which we celebrate by stringing lights. Now, if you look at this North Star at night, you will notice if you spend some time that all the other stars are circling about it. And you get these like wreaths of light in the heaven. The way that we string our Christmas tree is like walk a circle around, and in the back, which nobody sees, then you go up, right? And then you do another circle, and then you go up. And I'm sure we, in this way, at least here at this house, we celebrate this as the parallels of the stars in the heaven, which circle the one star at the top of the tree. So why does Santa live at the North Pole? Because that's the one place on Earth where that North Star, the star at the top of the world tree, is directly overhead at the zenith. Not just because it's cold. Cancer, the cusp of tropical Cancer, is always in every moment forever just above Earth's Tropic of Cancer. Tropical Cancer, Tropic of Cancer. Tropic of Capricorn, tropical Capricorn. Makes sense, right? But I can also take these to the poles, I can say that 0 Cancer is Earth's north point because Earth's pole is always leaning towards that degree of the ecliptic plane, the orbital plane, the tropical zodiac, and that Capricorn is the south point. And I can from there fill in the other 2 cardinal directions, which host the other 2 cardinal sign cusps, Aries and Libra. The tropical zodiac is 100% undeniably a directional device, and therefore it is a seasonal device. But look, we have this strange challenge to seasonal opposition. This is another wonderful challenge to astrology. Say, look, hey, if you're saying that Scorpio is like the darkness because it's the middle of autumn, well, that's not true in South Africa. So what do? Do you flip the zodiac around for people born south of the equator? If you do, what do you do for people born on the equator where it's both north and south hemisphere? What about the tropics? Things get weird. What about beyond the Arctics? Things get really weird. But look, friends, north is north everywhere on Earth. Oh, except the North Pole where it's nowhere and the South Pole where it's everywhere. But, you know, everywhere on Earth, we can actually face that northern place. Or in the southern hemisphere, they face the southern pole and then their back is north. The tropical zodiac is a directional device. It itself is completely defined by the New Year's tree, the world tree. So we move from this time, 0 Cancer. I speak northern hemisphere. That's where we are. At least I am. I'm not sure where you're coming in from. Summer solstice, and we move, see the sun moving as we orbit the sun through the tropical signs of Cancer and Leo and Virgo, and then equinox. It's passing over the equator again, but this time heading south. And there's many New Year's traditions there, especially for cultures who start their days at sunset. Moon cultures who tend to read from the right to the left, and I digress, but these are all things that I teach in Earth Astrology School because it's about reconnecting to natural time, getting out of this weird thing where every minute, well, every hour is 60 minutes, for example. I need to, for the sake of time, by the way, leave that one there. Anyway, there is one time each year when the sun is due west of Earth's center. We, in the tropical zodiac, say this is the sun's entrance into the tropical sign called Libra, which has a glyph that looks like this. The ultimate image of the setting sun, do you see? Why? Because the setting sun is the image of the West, and sun is entering Libra when it is due west of Earth center, where we all connect. If you look at the radiance of the light on the ocean, you might see an older symbol from Egypt called the Ankh. Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius are all southern signs, see, south of the equator. And so that's when the southern hemisphere has longer days, and in the northern hemisphere, we have longer nights. And this is the longest night of the year. This is what we celebrate today. This is where we are called to go into the cave and find that inner light, which will never be extinguished, and why we celebrate this evergreen, this New Year's tree, the one that keeps its boughs throughout the cold winter time, the one that does not lose leaves, but rather transmits its seed through cones, you know. This is the time of the goat, the goat that climbs the mountain. Now, if you know about the old constellational associations, we say the sea goat, or the goat fish, a goat with a fish's tail. Well, that's a weird thing. But you know, if you go to the coast, especially if you have that beautiful Mediterranean water or sea water, depending where you are, south of you, and you look at this time of the year, when we have the lowest midday sun at winter solstice, and it's like right above the water, you see. There's that goat fish. I mean, really, like the bowl of the earth is reaching down into the waters, the bottom of the land on which we could stand. There's Yeti crabs that live down there, which I love. Yeti, this word for the winter, and crabs, oh, a word associated with Cancer, right? And the summer. Anyway, the bottom of the seafloor is just as low beneath the surface as the peaks of the mountains are above. And that, of course, is the goat who climbs, but climbs very slowly, because from this time of the longest night, the lowest midday sun, the sun does now begin its yearly climb. The goat is climbing up, you see, but it's very slow at the tropicos, the turnarounds. It's 6 months going down, and now it stops. Sun stops. That's what solstice means, and turns around and goes up for 6 months, you see. But at the extremes, it's very slow to change. And in between, fast. In between, that's the ram, right? Who climbs much more quickly, but the goat can go further. A little bit of a steadier thing. Now, it's very northern hemisphere, maybe I could even say like chauvinistic, to suggest that this is why Capricorn is the goat. And you know, there's many winter traditions of goat. And like, well, let me leave that there for now. But it's actually not entirely a northern hemispheric thing to speak about the goat climbing the mountain at this time, even though, of course, in the southern hemisphere, this same solstice is the height of the light, when the sun at summer solstice will begin to slowly fall. I mean, goats climb down too, but this is one of the most important truths. It's called the apex of the sun's way. We now know that our solar system itself is moving through space. This was discovered, as was Uranus, by William Herschel, it is said, who noticed that his star records in the 18th century were different than those of previous astronomers dating back, and that he could see this like dispersion. And what was noticed, and we've tracked this and proved it's true, that the stars around Vega and in the Hercules zone of the northern sky, the northern stars, like Vega never sets at Earth's North Pole. The stars around there are slowly opening up. Whereas the stars on the other side in the south, centered around Sirius, the brightest star of the heavens, which never rises at Earth's North Pole and never sets at Earth's South Pole, it's a southern star. The stars around Sirius are slowly collapsing, very slowly moving in towards one another. And the stars around Vega are very slowly spreading out from one another. And this isn't actually happening in space. We realize that this is happening because it's an effect of our movement. Just as when you drive a car on a forest road, the trees in front of you appear to open up, where the trees behind you appear to close. So we can see that because the stars around Vega appear to open up, and those around Sirius appear to close, that Earth is literally moving north through space. And we are doing this because the sun is in our local space. This is called the apex of the sun's way. We are moving north. So if you've studied astrology and you connect the idea of the North Lunar Node to the future, for example, this is why it is astronomically accurate. We can talk about dragons' heads and tails another time. Oh, maybe I'll see you in my school. Every year, the sun, from Earth's point of view, moves 6 months south from the Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Capricorn, and then from there stops and turns around and moves north in the same direction from our point of view that we ourselves are moving through the heavens as we travel with the light. I love to share the mysteries of these very glyphs we use, like this one, Sagittarius, which I hope you can see now is the New Year's tree, is Earth's rotational axis. You know, there's that strange horizontal line in the glyph, or perpendicular line. It's the rotational plane. It's the circle of matter, the equator, you see. But what about this other glyph at this time of year where we celebrate the longest night up north and the sun's movement from Sagittarius to Capricorn? What is the reason for the seasons shown in this way? Because at this time, Earth's southern pole is leaning towards the light. The sun is found 23.5 degrees south of Earth's equator at the Tropic of Capricorn. And from here, we'll slowly climb north until it reaches the equator, which I find in the horizontal line at the top of this Capricorn glyph, the diagonal line being Earth's tilted axis, and the circle, of course, being the sun. So, my friends, I hope you have enjoyed some of these sacred astronomy transmissions of the New Year's tree. Many of these mysteries I teased will be revealed in my Earth astrology school, like this of the septagram, which is funny. We can see I'm still learning because I said sep in 9, even though I designed this beautiful 7-pointed star a few days ago. With the 7 planetas, the wandering lights. You might be confused about the glyph on the upper lip. That's an old image for Mars, the opposite of Venus, the cross of matter above the circle of spirit. I like to stay true to the geometry as I explore. This star tells us much about the magical days of the planets and the planetary hours that we often use to elect anything. Also, connections between the atomic weight and conductivity of the associated alchemical metals, gold for the sun, silver for the moon, iron for Mars, mercury for Mercury, tin for Jupiter, copper for Venus, lead for Saturn, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. Actually, Saturday, which begins with Mercury's hour at night, Sunday, Jupiter's night, Moon day, Venus's night, Mars's day, Saturn's night, Mercury's day, Sun's night, and like that. And I would love to teach you more about that. In fact, I'm offering a free planetary hours, days, and alchemical metal associations class to anyone who chooses to sign up for my list here at GeminiBrett.com. You can go to the courses page. If you want to hear more about my Earth Astrology School, which begins this January 6th, where we will begin our walk around the Earth, the circumambulation of the sun. We will have a solar year, 24 classes in the solar year with ceremonies throughout. And next year will be a silver year. So this year we will tune our travel with the sun, and next year with the moon and the sun, the lunations. So yeah, please head over there and add your name and email. You're not signing up for anything but more information about the school, and you'll get priority access, and you will also receive a free class on the planetary days and hours. All right, so thank you. You know, actually, I just want to share something about this image here, though it's a tight screenshot and so out of focus, but you can see Venus kind of in the top middle there. This was the first day I saw Venus last year. It was May Day, Beltane. And I was gazing at Venus and celebrating the truth that I knew I would see her, though many of my teachers said she would not be visible for days and maybe weeks still. And I was just loving Venus and seeing her in the chakras of the sky, right? The red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and indigo of the sky energies in the proper sunset. And I was just drinking Venus's light and taking pictures. And I put my camera away so I could really open up and receive. And then this barred owl came and landed on that tree, an evergreen tree, which I'm looking at right now, which will never lose the green from its boughs. And the owl was staring at Venus and then slowly turned its head all the way around and looked at me like, hey, you're into this too? Yes, absolutely. Planets are my friends. And the owl then looked back at Venus, and I asked permission, and I really wanted to hear yes, so maybe that's why I did, but it sounded like, hey, can I take a picture of this? One of the most magical times, but they're very common for me, and I'm sure for you too, that when we understand that the teachings of the heavens are heard not by going out in a way, but coming down and in, right? When we gaze at the sky, we remember we are humans and we are tasked at this time to stay human. Yeah. Not the easiest thing to do with all of these moving lights on our computer screens. So hopefully when we put a star on the top of the New Year's tree this year, we will do it for Earth and remember that our bones are made of her stones. All right, well, I see a few questions in the Q&A box that I can't read. So Skanja, maybe you could translate that for me. I'm happy to stick around and answer questions, or we could also end now. This was a little bit longer than I had anticipated. It's up to you.
They're mostly like, great, thank you. I learned so much. I remembered we went to up and see all the mystery out there and come back. Thank you. And is there any questions?
Are you looking at the chat or the Q&A box?
Okay, I'm checking that too.
It's such a beautiful language to stare at, though I have no idea, right? Just the way the words come together.
And when we are waiting for questions that people can write in Q&A box, I cannot stop myself and say that when you were in Istanbul, it was the rise of Venus again. And it was the first time three of us, Umut, Fırat, you and I, will see the Venus together and make a little ceremony for that. And it was magical. And you offered us that you two need to do something in Turkey, special. And we started to work together and we did so many workshops after you suggest. So it was magical.
Yeah, so that was like 19 months before that picture with the owl, because that happens every 19 months. And I remember that. And I went on from that time we spent together and went to Cappadocia and Derinkuyu. And so some of these sites that I've really been longing to go, these beautiful, mysterious places. And of course, we spoke about Göbekli Tepe, a place where I've not yet been, but need to go back into like the roots, you know. I mean, even modern anthropologists don't want to believe the truth that we've found in Turkey, these ancient roots, you know, and so much of the astrological mysteries, like some of the forgotten mysteries are rooted there too. And, you know, I should maybe just share that's my quest. Like I study the old texts and new, but I understand that there are poems heard in the stories of the stars that will take us back to the time before words. You know, we have moon carvings on animal bones from 30,000 years ago, and Taurus with the Pleiades painted in the caves of Lascaux. You know, I mean, this this tradition, it goes all the way back to really what it is to live according to the rhythms of natural time. These days, it's a little bit harder to understand why the full moon matters, because we walk out and there's street lights and you can barely ever receive that silver blessing of the moonlight, you know, unless you get away from the city place. But, you know, it's as important as food, and remembering the planting cycles and remembering travel cycles and what it is to be nomadic or agricultural or whatever. And I think that if we choose to intentionally reclaim our connection to natural time, we will do this world a great boon of resisting the transhumanistic cyborg, you know, approach that would take us out of our humanity. And not to say that technology equals evil. I'm very glad I can share with you from across the sea like this. I think that's a wonderful thing too. But may this
I have new
technology,
ideas for that.
yeah, good. Well, may this technology only remind us that we're always connected anyway, and that there's a heart field. I should say, I should have said this before, that my school, of course, will not have Turkish translation. So please come
Or
if you.
maybe we'll learn something.
We could do, I mean, we could do
I-
that actually, like post-production for sure. I have had a few things translated into Turkish now. Anyway, so did anything show up in the Q&A, or are they just like, way to go on the
No, there
tree?
are only thank yous and people are so happy. Only one question about 2022.
What's
And
it
I
gonna be?
saw a meme like 2022 TOO.
Yeah, so what do I feel next year is going to be about?
Yeah.
It reminds me, I want to take y'all somewhere else as I say this. So let me first open up a web page. Oops. Yeah, I mean, part of the gig of an astrologer is forecasting, right? And I've come to embrace it, though for a long time I very much resisted. But one of the ways that I tune into charts now is musically. And I've created a system where I can take a chart and I can turn it into notes of musical harmony. And my friend Eric Deutsch, who's a master pianist, and we played together in bands for years. And I mean, I'm going to play you some of his music. So actually, Ganja, why don't you choose a sign? Any of
Pisces?
the Pisces. All right. So we'll listen to the Pisces new moon song. Oh, and let me make sure I shared my sound. I did. Okay. So I'll just share this address here at the top of the screen. You can go there and listen to this record for free, or you can buy a song or the album for $7 or more. And it's a song that we created based upon the astrology charts of each of the 13 new moons of 2022. And for me, it actually does more than words. It helps me kind of just tune into the energy. It's this project has really changed the way that I approach astrology. Like when I'm teaching for larger organizations or when looking at personal charts. So as this is playing, and especially Pisces, it's a good time too, right? Because as Marie shared with you, and you know, I'm saying this, there's a hummingbird flying outside in a loquat tree, a fruit tree, which is just beginning to flower. And there's a hummingbird with a very bright pink hood flying right here. I wish I could show you. Emerald green body and this kind of pink red hood. And yet, you know, the hummingbird itself is a symbol for joy, a symbol for light. It's really wonderful to see them in the wintertime. I've noticed recently that they're often still. right? It's rare to see a hummingbird not working, but lately they've just been sitting in these branches of this tree and just kind of blowing around in the wind like this. It's a really wonderful thing and a reminder, like one who has a heartbeat that's like the fastest rhythm on earth, that also chooses to like chill and contemplate. Anyway, with a hummingbird, often for me as an expression of joy, I'm glad that you chose Pisces, because as Marie shared with you, one of like kind of the great gatherings of the year of 22 in the heavens is really a triple conjunction of Jupiter and Neptune, and then Venus comes into join. And these are the three planets which traditionally are associated with the sign of Pisces. That Jupiter in the tradition is said to be the domicile lord or the landlord of Pisces. Like the Pisces is his house, okay? In modern astrologers like Maurice associate it with Neptune. And then long-standing, really reaching back into the Babylonian astrology is the idea that Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces, that she is an honored guest in that sign. So there's something really beautiful there, Pisces, and like the one heart and the connection of compassion and healing and hope. And, you know, I'll say this just as this song takes a turn, because Pisces, for me, it is the waters that connect heaven and earth. And one of the ways that is expressed is in the rain, you know, in this great cycle of water life, which becomes the ocean and then ascends again to the heavens and cries to us again, right? To feed us and give our plants energy so that we can eat and live. But the rain itself can be quite a depressing thing. And I think Pisces can really go either way. It's said traditionally to be a double-bodied sign, one fish that reaches for the heavens and one fish that dives into the waters of earth. And I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic, and I will choose personally in my own life, in my own circles, love and compassion. But importantly, compassion itself cannot happen without passion. Right? We have to source our own heart if we want to give love and receive love. That's how Scorpio offers the triangle to Pisces. And I think that's something that in many ways is taken from us when we're taught that giving is receiving, that receiving is taking. One of the great teachings of our time is learning that it's okay to love yourself, to care for yourself, and not to give all of your light away. Yeah. And I think this is one of the most important callings of our time, of our age, and of this year to come in a very significant way. And as much as Pisces is healing, compassion, you know, I'll say like Kuan Yin, the goddess of this tea that I consistently drink, it can be delusion, confusion, manipulation, like on a global silver screen propaganda, which is something that we have really been prey to in the course of the last couple of years, from my opinion. This is a place where Maurice and I very much diverge, by the way, as Scorpio sun folks, where I see a lot of the kind of global story that people are just accepting as truth without having a look, being a book that is written to keep us away from our own power, our own passion, and there cannot be true compassion without passion. By the way, I'm looking out this same window and the hummingbird is gone, but now I see coyote. And it's a young coyote and it's a lone coyote, right? Who we know are pack animals. I'm just trying to receive. I've got to play Gemini because coyote is so Gemini. So you hear how, let's just listen for a second. You hear how different this song is. You hear Eric there, though. He's got 2 coyotes. And then I'll go to one or the other. They've been howling a lot at night. So powerful. And there's many of them around here. And they come together in a group and they howl at the moon and they do their thing. And they hunt together, you know. But by day, they tend to spend their time alone. And most importantly, in their cunning and their craft and their bushy tail, which has often been associated with game changers like comets from the heavens, they remind us to smile at it all and to remember that there is a way through. And that when the mind gets confused in trying to solve the problems of the world as if it's a mathematical equation, we must relax the head and allow for the open human heart. So I think that much of 22, as it is with all years, will have so much to do with how you choose to participate or how you choose to play. But so much of it, and speaking of Gemini, I think I'll stop this now and just finish with you like this, is about the story that we speak, right, in our own personal truth, in the way that we connect to global truth. So I would just ask everyone here, first of all, yes, to allow a beautiful and loving death for the year, which now will become rich, dark soil through composting for the seeds of the light year to come. To really tune into your wish list, like that's not bad. What is your prayer for the year and how can you be of service to that prayer? And please choose, when you listen to the news, regardless of whether you're getting it from TV or an Instagram feed, to listen to your own heart and ask, is this true? Is this my truth? And is this the truth I choose? Because what I see, and I'm sad to say, in the year to come, is that on the world stage, this beautiful benefic tripleting will probably look more like propaganda and manipulation than it will like hope and dreams. But on a personal space, for those who choose to live in the waves of the heart, it will definitely be the latter, and we will be the ones who, you know, climb that hill and allow a light to shine from a higher place that others can choose to see and follow. So there's stress in the year to come. There's a lot of awareness of the problems that have been around, but that as well is something when we are told what the problems are and how to solve them, we have to say, is that truth? Is that my truth? What is my view of these problems and how would I solve that? And more importantly, how would we solve that? Because it takes a tribe. And I think most importantly is to just kind of circle back to this, the walking of the sun and these stations of the year and the importance of allowing ourselves to go into the darkness to find that light. These are the old ways, and the old ways are not ways of separation. We literally would not survive alone. They are ways of connection, of family, of tribe, of culture, of connection, of love. And it's up to us to choose that, to choose to be circle, and then the false lines will not be read to those whose ears are open to the beating heart. Something about that in 2022.
It was awesome. Thank you so much. You
It was
directly
my
speak to my
pleasure.
heart.
Thank you for inviting me here to Turkey in this way, and I cannot wait until we get to gaze upon a rising, returning Venus or Mars in the middle of the night or whatever it may be. But let us all remember that there are many stars in the heavens, that everyone on earth can see, and may they always bathe us in their light and remind us that even when things seem so dark, it's just because a new dawn is preparing itself, that in this soil, a new seed will be planted. And as we move together with open hearts and minds that welcome wisdom, we will grow. We will grow through what we go through. And perhaps that's what this place is all about. Thank you. Aho.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
It was an honor to be with you.
See you in
soon.
space.
See you in space. Bye bye. Eminim ki siz de benim kadar keyif aldınız. Hakikaten kusursuz bir sunumdu Cemilay'dan. O zaman yarın sabah 08:08'de görüşmek üzere. Telegram'dan yazacağım biraz sonra. Panik olmayın. Çok seviyorum. Bay bay.